So this is gonna be a more civilized video than my last one. And it's gonna be about Teofimo Lopez versus Jamaine Ortiz. Now, I'm doing this a day later because I didn't watch it live. And I didn't really have that much interest in watching it live because I thought this was probably gonna be kind of a showcase fight. To tell you the truth, I actually thought Jamaine Ortiz kind of surprised me. He got his tactics, I won't say spot on, but his tactics were pretty good in this fight. He had the right idea. He stuck and moved. And I suppose he watched the Sandor Martin fight and saw how much trouble he gave him. And the fact that Teofimo only snuck by with a split decision, despite the fact that Sandor didn't really even land that many clean shots in the fight, and figured, well, you know what, if I just land a few more shots than he does, but employ similar if not the same tactics, I'll probably get the decision as a result. You know, logical, I guess. It was a pretty dull affair, I have to be honest. It was a poor style matchup between the two. I mean, how many times have we seen a puncher who's poor at cutting the ring off, doesn't really apply pressure pretty well, but does hit hard and does discourage opponents from coming in, fighting against a spoiler, and it makes for a shit fight. That's Top Rank, having done it 2 times so far in the past few months. It happened with Shakur and De Los Santos, where they matched in a big puncher with Shakur, and Shakur looked terrible and he was apprehensive, and De Los Santos didn't have the foot speed, he had good hand speed, but he didn't have the foot speed or the pressure fighting abilities to cut the ring off on him. And the same thing happened with Nakatila as well, and the same thing has happened in this fight. To be honest, you know, I kind of sidetracked a little bit in the second half of the fight. It looked like Jamaine Ortiz probably had done enough to win. I thought it looked like he had won about 7-8 rounds, but I can't really complain with the decision that much. It wasn't a complete robbery. I mean, like I said, it was a bad style matchup between a puncher who can't really apply pressure and a mover who's too conservative with his output to be able to capitalize completely. To the point to where they basically just nullified and neutralized one another, and their outputs both were relatively poor. Teofimo's never been really a high output fighter, but Ortiz especially, he didn't look as good as he did in the Loma fight because, well, he's not as familiar with Lopez as he was with Loma. He was a long-time sparring partner of his, and Teo was also the same size, whereas Ortiz is used to fighting guys way smaller than he is, to be quite honest with you. First half of the fight, I thought Ortiz, I'm not even going to say dominated, because there were no really rounds in particular that he genuinely dominated, but they landed a pretty similar, neither guy really landed that many hard shots on each other. I thought Teo landed some hard shots in the 12th round, and occasionally, you know, a nice follow-up right hand that he would disguise, you know, with a 1-2 kind of a feint, but neither guy really landed any hard punches, so in general, I gave Ortiz the benefit of the doubt and gave him the rounds just based on the fact that he probably marginally outlanded him in many of them. Whereas in the case of Teofimo, Teofimo was just loading up on his punches. I hear a lot of people saying that, you know, Jamaine Ortiz ran and he put up a shit performance, and I guess it wasn't a great performance. I mean, he is the B-side, so the onus really isn't on him to perform as much, but either way, a lot of people saying he fought a cowardly fight or whatever. I mean, that's cool. You can say he didn't do enough, and I do agree that he didn't really fight a particularly he didn't really fight a good enough fight to be able to earn a decision in this fight. But if you're gonna criticize him and talk shit about him a lot, you know, for that type of stuff, how you have to look at Teofimo Lopez and just what exactly was he doing from a technical level that was correct in this fight? He quite literally was doing what every single coach discourages fighters from doing against spoilers and movers, which is following him around in a circle. Ortiz was using lateral movement around the ring, and whether you like it or not, look, I understand to an extent a B-side fighter is not going to be able to get away with it to the degree that an A-side fighter is, so he does have to put a stamp on his performance more to be able to get a victory. Or should I say a decision. But what exactly was Teofimo doing that was technically correct? He was literally following the man around in a circle. Right? He was not moving laterally. He wasn't setting any types of traps. He wasn't even feinting. He didn't jab enough. He wasn't really doubling or tripling up on his jab. He didn't disguise most of his punches. He was just sitting there, loading up, and relied largely on the fact that Jamaine Ortiz had such a conservative output to be able to catch up with him in certain rounds and land, say, 1 or 2 clean power shots, and hope that would be enough to make the difference. In some of the rounds it was, but in my opinion it wasn't enough for him to win. But I mean, I don't know. I guess he could have gotten the victory either way. Teofimo, yeah, currently I'm watching the decision right now. He's fucking like breaking down, crying and stuff. I've never really liked Teofimo too much as a character. I've always found him pretty erratic. He's had a good career and he is a very good fighter, you know, but I do think he does have a ceiling eventually. Right, this is like multiple times by now where he's gotten, say, a contentious decision, and he's basically had a meltdown after the fight. In the post-fight interview, he started running around, he's like quoting Cameron lyrics or whatever, "Suck my dick!" And, yeah, same thing kind of happened in the Sandor fight. He had a meltdown after the fight. He was like, "Do I still got it?" He always has these little, you know, meltdowns after these fights because right now he's kind of in the same position Shakur was after this fight against De Los Santos. I mean, I guess he looks a little bit better than he does, but let's keep it real. This is the second time in the past 2 years where he's had a relatively contentious decision go in his favor. Right? I thought he won the Sandor fight, but this fight I thought Ortiz did a better job, and I thought he landed a lot more clean shots than Sandor did in their fights. But regardless, his stock has been taking a hit over the past few years. It went up definitely with the Taylor fight, but we got to look at the circumstances behind that fight and what state of his career Josh Taylor was in at that particular point in time. And, I mean, once again, this is just another poor performance. This doesn't really assist his brand because, you know, it's hard to even say that he really pressed the action that much because, yes, he was coming forward, but his output himself was extremely conservative. He wasn't throwing a lot of punches or applying smart pressure or, you know, trying to bulldoze him or anything of the sort. He didn't, you know, attempt a committed body attack. He was just doing a lot of posturing, a lot of gesturing. His frustration was clearly visible. He was trying to back against the ropes and invite Ortiz over. And he was still even losing exchanges when he would do that. Very poor performance from Teofimo. It is what it is. One thing I have to say, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before I wrap this video up, is, you know, I tend to notice a lot with American prospects nowadays. I mean, look, they all try to be like Floyd. They all try to copy his mannerisms outside the ring. They copy his lines, and then especially in the ring, they all try to do the shoulder roll. They all try to have a wide stance and, you know, lure opponents into counter punches and try to catch and shoot out of the Philly shell. I mean, they all want to be just exactly like him. I tend to notice a lot of them do tend to struggle with movers, right? I mean, I would love to, like we saw, for example, Stephen Fulton against Arnold Kagagai when Kagagai used a lot of lateral movement. He struggled in that fight, and he's a similar archetype to many of these guys, even though he actually has a little bit more versatility than many of them. Jaron Ennis, who I think is further ahead in terms of skill than many of these guys. We saw him as, you know, a kind of a counter puncher who likes to lure guys in. Really struggle with Karen Chukiadzon when he fought against him, and he was a guy who used a lot of lateral movement. So I'd be very interested to see how somebody like Haney or Shakur, or even, Tank, we actually seen him struggle against movers to an extent in the past. We saw him struggle a little bit against Hector. We saw him fall behind a little bit against Barrios when Barrios wasn't even really, you know, using that. He wasn't even really using a wide stance and fighting from the outside that effectively, just kind of using a quick bounce, a quick little double jab, and he was able to outscore him in many of the rounds. So it kind of, I'd be interested to see how fighters, say, of a similar archetype in terms of their counterpunching or reliance on counterpunching, like a guy like a Shakur or a Haney, how they would do against, you know, good movers on the outside and how effectively they could cut the ring off. Just my opinion. This was a poor fight, like I said. I thought Jamaine Ortiz probably did enough to win, but whatever. Teofimo, he's a spoiled brat. And I'm not even trying to say that to be personal. He is mentally unstable. He was better off, I believe, with Joey Gamache, but I think his father's obnoxiousness is even beyond somebody like, say, an Angel Garcia's or even a Ruben Guerrero's. I think it's rubbed off on him a little bit too much. I think he's become too emotional, and I believe it's dictating. I think it's influencing and affecting his performances in the ring. He doesn't enter the ring with a clear head, and he allows himself to get flustered way too easily. And he needs to sort that out, in my opinion. So, that's what I thought. Have a good one, man.